Hey guys, hey ladies, hey friends, hey foes. We just wanted to take a second to remind you that while we're okay swearing when little ears are listening, you might not be, and that's okay. So here's your chance to pause us and wait for nap time, or pop in your earbuds. We hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome back to another episode of Done Playing by the Rules. I'm Jenna.
And I'm Janelle.
And we're kind of a
And
mess.
today, we're a mess.
Today or this month?
Yeah. This whole summer, Jenna, the whole summer into fall for you.
Yeah.
So we founded this podcast, Done Playing by the Rules, on us wanting to reach out to people and share our grief stories and make people feel less alone in their grief. We really felt like, I don't know, something about recording the podcast made me feel like I had it under control. And I had all the tools now because I recorded a podcast on it. And then I'm dead in the middle of Anniversaries. Jenna's dead in the middle of Anniversaries. And we are fucking wrecked. We are wrecked. Yep. I just fell asleep on the couch for no reason for 2 hours in the middle of the day. I haven't slept for 3 days. I was
going to say, there is a reason. And one thing people don't talk about with grief is, one, you sleep a lot more. But two, it's not quality sleep. No, I have very vivid dreams. And they're not always about my parents. And they're not good dreams. If I ever dream about my parents, it's very negative. It's about...
I know no one that has good dreams. Okay, so I don't have any dreams about my dad, but my sisters are really negative too. And I don't know anybody that has good dreams about their last parent. Do you?
No. I have dreams no matter that how much you love them. My mom is stuck and she can't come with me. I have dreams that my mom is drunk and belligerent. I have dreams that my mom is mean and yelling at me. And I have dreams that my dad won't talk to me. It's real fun.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
No, see, I'm glad I don't have any dreams.
Yes. I would rather not. And sometimes I won't even remember the dream and I'll just be in the really bad mood and then something will trigger it and I'll remember it. And then I'm in a worse mood.
You'll just get the flash of it and you'll be like, oh yeah, I had that horrid nightmare last night. My sister fully remembers them and will tell me about them. And I'm like, oh my God. She's like, the other night he was calling me, screaming at me because he couldn't get the cable to work, but he couldn't get through to me on the phone. And she was like, I think it means that he can't get through to me from the other side or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, I'd rather just have fitful sleep. Zach got in my bed this morning, was like, your bed's soaking wet. And I was like, he's like, did you wet the bed? And I was like, no, I just sweat through the night and just toss and turn fitfully until I can't function any longer. And I never really realized that's a symptom of grief. There's so many symptoms of grief. And you and I are in the thick of it. Jenna, do you want to tell your vague summer of loss story? When did your anniversaries start for you?
Well, there was a lot coming into summer, late spring of triggering, not necessarily anniversaries, but big moments. For example, this is when we found out we were pregnant. This is when I had to call hospice. This is when we kind of had last big moments with my mom. This is also at the end of spring was the last time I saw my dad. And it was the first time he met my daughter. So when my dad passed, my daughter was 3 months. When my mom passed, I was about 3 months pregnant. So anything relating to my daughter is very sensitive. And so all those are kind of coming up. And then it was my dad's anniversary recently and
of his passing.
And then my mom's anniversary is coming up. Also on my mom's anniversary is the anniversary of my dad's funeral. So I was at my dad's funeral on my mom's 1-year anniversary.
So it's still the most heartbreaking story of all time. Every time I hear it, I'm like, I'm going to be sick.
Yep. Basically, my theory is that I'm in a simulation and somebody is controlling and let's see what else we can do.
The biggest asshole in the world is oh my God, who is controlling it? What a dick.
It's Bob behind his keyboard. I told my husband this and he thought it was ridiculous. He was like, are you kidding me? I was like, it gets me through at this point because
nothing else
like
explains
seriously?
it, okay?
Yeah.
Yes. And nothing,
Yep.
and you and I talk about that a lot, is like, why do all the dickhead people get to live and all the rad people don't?
Yes.
Like, there's something controlling it. Okay, maybe we'll say it's Jesus and not Bob the simulation. Okay, we'll figure it out.
Oh, and
But
then
I
add
want
in
to
there,
make
can we throw in there like Mother's and Father's Days too, as like all kind of
Oh,
intertwined in
can
there?
we just
So,
not? Like, I would also, I think that's okay. So I'm going to make my 2 points. Then I want to come back to Father's Day and how complicated that is, because we have to celebrate our husbands
yes.
because they're fucking rad fathers while we're desperately mourning our own fathers.
And if you have a
And it
father-in-law,
is,
you have to celebrate your
oh, all
father-in-law.
of
Yep.
it is so triggering. And it is such a, yeah, last year we didn't even acknowledge it. Like, I was just
Yeah.
like, Josh, I'm sorry. Like, nothing.
Mhm.
Like, I think we wrote him like a card with a marker and was like, that's it.
Aw.
That's all we're
Yep.
doing. But 2 points, Jenna, for the layperson that isn't a griever. Jenna using the word anniversary is interchangeable with the word of their death date. Because anniversary, for people that haven't experienced grief, probably think it's like their wedding anniversary or something joyous. Guess what?
That's
You
true.
don't get to have joyous anniversaries anymore. Now you have death,
No.
sickness anniversaries, and all of those anniversaries. So when she says anniversary, she's talking about death anniversaries or anniversaries of a hospitalization or a surgery. And then an article that my sister sent from our favorite Psychology Today, written by Dr. Ellen Hendrickson. Despite the patterns being predictable, the reactions themselves are varied as the individuals who are experiencing them. Sometimes the mind remembers even unconsciously, and a psychological reaction like a spike in depression or PTSD can be triggered by the weather, the light, or other seasonal reminders like back to school or the first signs of spring.
And can we dive into that? But first, I want to acknowledge today is Bumpa, which if you've been listening, you know who that is. Birthday, which is Janelle's dad.
And that's another layer on layer on layer.
And so we thought this would be a great time to kind of go a little more into grief because we're learning ourselves. And every time I reach out to people, they're like, you've helped me so much. And I find that eye-opening because I feel like I'm still in the thick of it. And I'm like, how did I help you? Because I
But
don't
the people
know what
that
I'm
are
doing.
a little bit, I think of it as like crossing the river and all of us holding hands. And the people that are like almost to the other side of the riverbank are like pulling the people that are just entering along.
That's true.
But we're really good examples of this because Jenna's experiencing a 4th and a 3rd anniversary season, and I'm coming into my 2nd. And so everyone says, a lot of people say the first year is the hardest, and then I know half of people say the 2nd and subsequent years are the hardest. Yeah, because you're in shock for half of the first year.
Yep.
But I thought I was really coming into this with I had extra therapy lined up, like the article says, and I was ready to go, and I recorded a grief podcast, so I know everything, and I got fucking smoked today. Like, just rocked out of my mind. I sat at my kid's swim lesson and just cried the whole way through with my huge fake sunglasses on, and like, it was a wreck. I'm a wreck today. And my dad's, you also have to understand, like, yes, it's his birthday, but it was also the day that he was supposed to come out of his like surgical fog, and it's often Father's Day falls on his birthday, and so this is just a really heavy week. He went into surgery 2 days ago, 2 years ago, and the surgery was supposed to be, I mean, we knew he was really sick, but it was supposed to be a quick and easy in and out, but we knew like there was some bad stuff going on. We had all the hope in the world. And then today I foolishly, and Jenna was like, get off social media. You're not allowed to go on anymore. Went onto Facebook, and it was like the board from his hospital room in the ICU where they wrote like, happy birthday, Steve.
Yes.
Stay off social media in your days. That's my next tip. But I thought that was interesting that you feel it coming into spring, because I don't usually, and I might just not be expert at, I call myself like a grief veteran now, but I'm not. You and I are brand new at this. But we're not as brand new as those people that are brand new. So if we can help those brand new know that it gets easier and the days of horror get fewer and far between, but there will always still be days where you don't sleep for 3 days and fall asleep on the couch and cry at swim lessons. It's just the way
it is. I personally don't think it gets easier. I think you learn to manage and you learn to live with it.
Yeah.
Because I think there have been years, and you would think having one parent pass 11 months after the other, I would be like, okay, I know what to expect every second anniversary, every third. No, it's different every time. And sometimes the rug is pulled completely out from underneath me. And I find lately, like before, I feel like I was super tired, super low energy, just irritable. Now I'm almost hyper. These big dates, I've been very hyper, a lot of heart palpitations. I feel like I could run a marathon. I don't want to be inside the house. I just want to get out, go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden I crash. And it's that nervous energy. And whenever I describe that to people, they're like, well, aren't you sad? Like, don't you want to kind of just like sit and talk and
have a cup of tea,
reminisce? Yeah. And I'm like, no, I need to get out and go and be active. I need to go for a bike ride. I need to go for a hike. I am nervous, anxious, and I can't tell you why. And so the article that Jenelle was referring to was really interesting because I had a spiraling out kind of week last week. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And I have to toot my own horn, beep, beep, because usually
I'm proud of you. You should.
Thanks. Because I noticed I was doing a lot of my OCD behaviors. We went camping. I was sanitizing more than is healthy. I was paranoid about my kids getting sick. Our dog was sick. And then I was like, now the kids are going to get it, which if you think about it, that doesn't really make sense because dogs and humans don't really pass sickness. And I was just kind of spiraling. I was being very neurotic about food and is this cooked? Is this clean? And our house, I felt like my house was caving in on me in a mess and it wasn't.
You literally did. I could tell from that. Yeah. I could tell from when we were talking that you were fully sure that you were living in some sort of like dilapidated, falling over structure. And your house is the cleanest house I know in the whole world. And then you're like, I'm not giving enough time to this. I'm not giving enough. I'm not giving. And you were fully in it. And your body fully believed what your brain was telling you.
Yeah. And I was like, I had that mentality that I wasn't doing anything good enough because I was stretched so thin. So I was like, I'm only giving 30% to everything. And I need to be giving more to certain things and I'm spiraling. And so I had a play date and it was with one of my best friends and I canceled because I was like, what if her kids are sick? What if my kids get sick? I need to clean the house. I need to do laundry. And I started talking to her that morning and I was like, I feel like you're mad at me because I canceled. And so I was like spiraling because I was also like, I'm not being a good enough friend. And every avenue of my life, I was like, I'm not eating healthy enough. Like every avenue, I was like spiraling. And I haven't had that in a really long time. So she was like, just come over. My kids weren't even awake yet. And I was like, this is where I was proud of myself. Because usually I'd be like, no, I need to do certain things. I was like, screw it. And I told my husband, I was like, I need to go. And he was like, okay. And so I just left. And I went to her house and we talked through it. And she gave me great tips, which I will happily share, and I'm sure I'll mention a few times on here. And then I started talking through it, and I started talking to Jenelle, and she was like, and what about grief? And I just started crying. I was sitting on my bedroom floor. This is after I got home, and I was like, that's it. I had no idea. I looked in my phone. This was on Friday. I looked in my phone, and I was like, my dad's anniversary is on Monday. I didn't even remember
You had no idea.
I had no idea. And I just started bawling and I was like, that's it. And my life, I've had that nervous energy, but now everything feels easier. I'm still coming down from it. So I am still cleaning a little bit, but like the laundry's not done. My to-do list for that day was at least 50 things. And then I looked back at it after I realized it was grief. And I was like, why did I think that needed to be done?
I do the same thing. I get in these frenzied panics and like sometimes it'll be that I need to buy something and this happened. I bought this giant jewelry organizer. I don't know if I told my sister this story and now I can't return it because the window expired. It's bigger than my kids. I don't even, Jenna, how much jewelry do I wear? These 2 bracelets and this ring, 3 things. That's it. And I have hundreds of pieces that I should donate and it's all costume jewelry. It's not worth anything, but I needed a jewelry organizer and I needed it. I had it ordered and sent to our house before we even lived here. And like, you just spiral into these weird obsessions because your brain is like, focus on anything but this trauma, focus on anything but this trauma. And I could so vividly see it happening to you that day. I don't even think I realized that it was our parents' anniversaries coming up, but I was like, oh, this is this is something is happening. And then I was like, oh God, we're a week out or whatever from our stuff. And so that was really because when you become so, and you kept using the word ruminating, and I was like, nah, this is grief. This is griefy. Yes. And this smells fishy.
And it's hard,
but that's a part of it too.
I've always had anxiety. So anxiety tied in with grief, it's like, which is which? Is this grief or is this anxiety or is it both? And it's really hard. And so I was really grateful you could like separate those. And can you share, you told me, and I can never quote it perfectly like you did, the quote from your grief group about the head and the heart.
Oh, yeah. I love that one. Okay. So my grief group, and this is something that it talks about, and we're going to link the article from Psychology Today, but the article also says it's never too late to join a grief support group. So even if you're 5 or 20 years out from the grief event and you're still experiencing trauma reactions, you can still go to a grief group and they will welcome you with open arms. But I joined my grief group 11 days after my dad died, which may have been a little premature. But the best thing I took away from that, well, I was like basically like circling the drain. Like I couldn't even function in my family. The best thing I took away from that is that your brain doesn't always remember the date, but your heart keeps a calendar. And it talks a lot about that in this article that we're going to link from Psychology Today. Your body's reptilian response is, and they talk a ton about experiments that show this scientifically. Your body registers a time of year to a traumatic event and stores it in your memory to protect you as a human being. And so they talked about some experiments they did with soldiers returning from the Gulf War and people that were involved in a deadly flood. And that time of year trickles around and they all have these very marked responses, and they're all very, but that's the other thing the article, and I think you and I've talked about, is grief looks so much like anxiety and depression. It's almost hard to tell. And if you're somebody that lives with anxiety and depression, you're just going from a 5 to a 10. And you just think like, oh, maybe my meds are off or maybe something's wrong because you know this feeling, you've lived here before, but you don't realize like this will go away in a week or two if you're on the other, if you're a year out. If you're not a year out, this might not go away in a week or two. It might take 6 months or whatever. But once you get past that year mark, this will go away after a week or two. This isn't you forever. And that was the hard part about early grief, is you feel like this is you forever.
Forever.
I was sure I was that way forever.
Yeah. And you even mentioned to me, like, maybe it's your meds when I started spiraling. And I was like, I don't think so, because it was so sudden. And I honestly think it was, we went camping and we had a camping trip from hell. And I think, and that was like the first real signs of like end of spring / summer, like, because we were at a beach location, which my parents loved. And I really think my body was like, I know what's going on, but you don't. Yeah. And I really think that's what got me. And I had never heard that quote. So even 3 and 4 years out, I'm still learning this, and it makes so much sense. And I'm always just like, oh, it's anxiety this time of year because things are changing and school's ending and I'm trying to get in a new routine. Well, no, it's fucking grief fucking with my whole brain and body and
my whole life. Okay, so another thing I wanted to talk about from the article was a study conducted by Yale University School of Medicine looked at anniversary reactions in veterans of the early 1990s Gulf War. Several years after the war, each veteran, along with his or her spouse, was asked to kind of go over what had happened the last 12 months. And they were asked to rate like the best month, the worst month, and then they linked them up with trauma events that happened to them while they were in the war. And actually, the spouses of the veterans were much more reliable in naming the worst month.
I could see that.
Because, as we all know, our husbands see it coming a mile, or our partners see it coming a mile away. And the PTSD symptoms lined up with the months in which their trauma had occurred. Reported external signs include emotional distance, irritability, and sleep.
Can we say irritability with an exclamation mark? Everyone annoys me. Everyone. And I'm sorry.
Everyone annoys me, and I emotionally distance too. And from my own fucking kids even.
Yep. Oh, 100%. My kids annoy me. My friends, I love you, but you annoy me. Like everyone. And it's not so much that they annoy me. It's like also the responsibility of having to call people back and text people back. Yeah. And remember at the beginning of this, I said to you, Janelle, I was like, my phone is overwhelming me because I have messages. And you were like, why? And I was like, I don't know. And that was all at the same time. And it was like the responsibility to respond to people. Everyone annoyed me. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I really didn't want to talk to my husband. Everything my kids did, when they smack their food, when they talk in baby voices, everything was like nails on a chalkboard to me. And it makes you feel like the worst parent and partner, but it's so natural. And I know you even said this morning, my kids are being so annoying. And I was like, grief check. Like, grief that's why check. I was like, can you just go take a nap?
Because you also, just do. But in my defense, fucking Mikey at the park today went like this to another mom, like right at her face.
Of course.
And so I was like, I'm so sorry. He's been doing that at swim lessons. Like, and she's like, it's fine. I mean, I guess he didn't get any spit on me. And I was like, I just need you to know I'm so sorry. This isn't how we normally are. And I just walked to the car and was like, get in the car. I didn't even like stop I was like, I'm so mad. I'm so embarrassed. But like, that's how it works too, is like when you're in the throes of this PTSD reaction, someone's going to do the shittiest thing because your kids pick up on it too. And that's a really hard but important part to remember. As I keep trying to, you know how they always say like separate the child from the behavior, like don't say you're naughty, say what you're doing right or whatever. I try to separate my child experiencing my grief reaction from my child, but they are picking up on it also. And so I have to keep reminding myself like they're seeing their mom kind of spiraling and don't know how to react. And I pulled him aside and I said, you know, mom's having a hard day because it's Bumpa's birthday, and I really need you guys to try to be a little bit better listeners because it's very hard for me to even walk into these swim lessons right now. And they were, of course, my 7-year-old was like, yes, mommy, yes. And then my 4-year-old was like, and I'm going to fall in the pool and then spit on a lady.
The older your kid is, you have to remember, even if they were young when this happened, they're experiencing it in their own way. With my oldest, this week has been difficult. We had a nighttime incident, and that hasn't happened, I don't know, the last time. And I also found a book that my mom made him. So we went we went on vacation. My son was probably like 2. And my mom was watching him and she was like, I'm going to make this his vacation. And so she took him all these places. They had adventures every day. She made him homemade like meals that I loved as a kid. And she took pictures the whole time. And then she made him a photo album. It was in the attic. And the other day I was cleaning his room and it was out. And I was like, hey, like, were you looking through this? And he was like, yeah, I was just really thinking about, he called her Grammy, and I just really don't understand why she had to die. She was really special to me. And then he just looked down and walked out of the room. And I was like, shit, like it's not just us. Like it's our kids and it's so hard. And I mean, and he dealt with it completely different than I did. I get mad and angry and he's on the, what you would quote typically expect, like the sad and the, you know, let's reminisce about mom and or Grammy and all that stuff. And I'm just over here angry and running. So.
Zach will do the same thing. He'll just be like eating breakfast one day and he'll just start crying and be like, I really miss Bumpa. And it'll just be like a random day out of nowhere. And then I'm just, but those days I'm not in the throes of it. So I'm like, yeah, I do too. I understand. He would have loved you so much. Like, da 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 da. But right now he's like, they don't really understand that this is like, I don't think
this was like, this was yesterday. So it was, it was triggering. So,
no.
But at the same time, I don't know about you, but like you hate to see your kids sad, but at the same time, it's also like, I'm really glad she meant that much to him. Yeah. And he had that relationship. Yeah. Even though you hate your kid being sad. Like,
because it passes down the legacy, which is something that we just so desperately try to cling to. I desperately try to cling to all these memories of my dad because I feel like poof, he's gone. In 20 years, is anybody going to even remember this person that was bigger than the whole universe to me and to so many people? And your kids clinging to that, and my spouse, my husband clinging to that. It's like anybody that clings to anything of my dad's is so special to me because they're one of the people that'll carry his legacy on for us. Even though, you know, he to me should be, you know, bigger than any celebrity and remembered forever. They should be talking about him like bigger than Steve Jobs. Like he was everything to me and to so many people, and now he's just like poof.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so anybody that hangs on to any part of that legacy, our kids, anyone, is so special to us
That's
that
so
I
true.
can't even.
So Jenelle, what do we do?
Mhm.
I will say
I
you
gotta
did
go.
give me my girlfriend gave me great advice because there were some aspects of my life that I needed to improve. And, I told her, I was like, it's funny because I have a podcast and I'm great at giving advice unless it's my own life. And she said to me so many times, like, here's the advice you've given me. And I had to sit there and write it down. And it was
I
so
know.
true. And it was simple things like, have you talked to your husband on how you're feeling? Well, no, I just assumed he knew. Have
Yeah, why
you
don't you?
Right. Have
Mind
you made a
reader.
list of your priorities that absolutely have to be done, not what you wish to be done? The laundry doesn't have to be done today.
Mm-hmm.
Feeding your kids has to be done today. And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you're right. And she was like, you're the one that gave me this advice. And I was like, oh.
You can't remember it when you're in the
No.
throes of it. You need the other person
Yes.
to bounce it off. And that's why you and I are very lucky to have each other, because we can literally
Yes.
like we go back, we take alternating
Mhm.
weeks of like giving each other
Yep.
therapy, because our anniversaries kind of like bob and weave. So like
Yep.
you were last week, now this is my week. And then
Yep.
next week will probably be your week, and then it'll be my week again.
Yes. And so then I remember coming to you and you were like, you need to get up and get out and do something. Go for a run. And I was like, I can't. I hurt my hip. And you're like, then go for a walk or do yoga or just sit in the sunshine. And so I did.
Yeah.
And I felt so much better. I just sat in the sun and then I did some gardening work and I did a little bit of walking and I just couldn't sit there and ruminate. I had to occupy my mind. And you knew that. So thank you.
Uh-huh. But I think that's also another important part. And like, I'm not going to diagnose your hip injury, but Jenna has a hip injury currently. And this was another part of the study, along with the mind, the body remembers, and a not so coincidental occurrence of physical problems occur around anniversary dates.
What?
Did you know this? Okay, but usually
No.
they are. So, for example, in a 2015 study, and this is trigger warning, this talks about infant or child loss. And we'll note it in the notes. In a 2015 study, researchers in Stockholm University tracked nearly 50,000 parents that had lost a child between 1973 and 2008. Bereaved mothers who also died between 1973 and 2008 had an increased chance of dying during the anniversary week of a child's death, especially of a cardiovascular related event, which you've heard everyone say they died of a broken heart. The association was even stronger among mothers who had lost a child over 12 months old. So,
Wow.
like, I'm not saying your hip is because of bereavement. However, we have to realize that this isn't just people can say like, oh, well, grief, they're talking psychological mumbo jumbo. Like, there is concrete studies that show that your body has a physical reaction to loss.
I have a story that goes with that. And I've never heard this before. Jenelle likes to keep her articles secret.
I've never heard it either. I surprise Jenna sometimes with new things.
And it makes so much sense. Okay, so when my mom passed away, my dad already had Alzheimer's. And even after my parents got divorced, my dad told me all the time, I love your mom. Your mom means the world to me. Like, he never lost that love for her. And I was the one that had to call and tell him. And I kept telling my brother, I don't know if he fully understands. And he would call me every now and then and just be like, did it really happen? And I'm talking about like in the first few days. And then we didn't really talk about it anymore. So then when my daughter was born, we went to see my dad. And she was, like I said, 2 or 3 months old. I can't remember. Yeah. And we went to go see him. And my brother surprised us. And him and my dad went on a walk. And my dad at this point is very limited communication. And most of what he says doesn't make sense, or it's stuff from way back when. And if you get a coherent thought, it's like lucky. And so he says to my brother, where is she? And he kept saying to me, I can't find her. Like this whole trip before my brother got there, I can't find her. I want out. I don't understand. And I didn't know what he meant. And I kept saying, thinking he was talking about his wife. And I was like, she's right here. She's right here. It wasn't his wife. And then he goes on a walk with my brother and he's like, where's mom? And my brother was like, Dad, she died. And my dad was like, what? Where's mom? And he said, my dad just broke down and started sobbing and was like, I miss her. I miss her. I miss her. We leave Florida to come back home. And my dad took a drastic turn for the worse. And I think that's why I had a hard time understanding how my dad got so bad. Because I was like, I was just walking and talking with him. What do you mean he can't talk? He can't eat. So that makes so much sense because it was almost like
Maybe it
he needed
fully
that to
clicked
realize.
then.
Exactly. Because then the rest of the trip, he just kept telling me, like, I need her. I miss her. I want her. When we were leaving, he was like trying to get in our car, like, take me with you, take me with you. And we didn't understand. We thought it was related to my mom, but we were like,
Yeah.
don't really know. And it's awkward because his wife was right there and we didn't want to be like,
how about you
not
take
talking
this
about
lady? How's she looking?
But you know what's funny is that my mom was always like, when your dad starts to decline, my mom didn't like his wife. And she was like, he's not going to remember her. He's only going to remember me. And sure enough.
Yes, honey.
Yep. And so then that makes sense why a few months later, he passed away. That's really interesting.
It finally clicked when your brother finally like got through to him and got into his like deeper brain.
And said it in person, face to face. That's insane.
Nothing kills me more than having to hear that your dad had to be told so many times about your mom, because that's just like opening the scab over and over and over again. I can't imagine trying to explain to somebody that has memory loss issues over and over and over again that someone's gone. Like,
and then he just start randomly talking about the weather, and I'm like, you realize what I just
do you
told
even
you,
care?
Right? It was so difficult. Like I would get so frustrated. I was like, I can't right now.
I gotta go.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so let's talk about from this article 5 tips to handle our own anniversary reactions. Yes. Tip number 1, prepare. If you see a therapist, arrange to see them more frequently than you would normally, which I did. I did two of my therapist appointments a week apart, and then I also have art therapy happening.
Woohoo.
But there's no amount of preparing that can truly prepare you for it. But I feel like it's nice to feel like you have a safety net. I don't think you can prepare to make it less awful, but you can prepare in case the bottom falls out to have support. Commemorate, which I had not been doing a really good job, and I'm really excited to do. So we donate to St. Jude's every year for my dad, because that's where he wanted all of his extra funeral money to go to. Or that's not where he wanted to go to, but that's what I picked because he loved kids more than anything in the world. And then my dad, long story of my dad loved the kids smashing watermelons and loved Oreos. So we're doing that today. So make a donation to a nonprofit they would have loved. Sign up for an associated charity event. You may feel empowered and liberated. Number 3, remember that this is temporary, which I think is so important, especially if you are new to grief. It feels forever. It is not forever, but if you're brand new, it is going to take a while. Mine was so dark for 6 months, I can't even remember most of it. But as the years become further and further out, they're going to be sharp, but they're going to be shorter in my experience. Anniversary reactions usually subside within a few weeks. I've worked with patients whose anniversary distress can last as long as a season, but most have a tough couple of days or weeks and then come out noticeably lighter. So remember, there is another side to this after the terrible side. Yeah. This one I thought was huge, and I've never really understood this until my sister sent me this article. Number 4, beware of the birthday effect, which Jenna and I have been talking a lot about. I have not been able to celebrate my own birthday since my dad passed. My birthday brings up the most triggering reactions to me, and I had never figured it out. And it is a similar phenomenon. Trauma survivors may also have spikes in grief or sadness unconnected to the trauma anniversary. For instance, the holiday season is a big one, but birthdays pose a particular challenge. Why? Folks with PTSD often believe they will die young or otherwise face a foreshortened future. Consequentially, birthdays become fraught with anxiety as they sense the end is nearing, which Jenna and I just talked about today, how we're giving our kids to each other because we're both convinced we're going to die young because our parents did.
I mean, I've told my family that I can't see myself living past like 40 or 50.
I've never seen myself as an old person.
Yeah. But I think also I never saw my parents as old. My dad was 60, maybe 61. I'm really bad with numbers if you haven't figured that out. My mom was in her 50s, and I never saw them old. And my mom and I look a lot alike. And so I can't picture what she would have looked like old. So why would I be able to picture myself old?
Oh, that's so interesting. I never thought about that.
Yeah. And so my grandma is old, and both of my grandparents are still living, but I don't look anything like them. I look like my mom and it's so weird to me. And so even we have a will, and we keep it up to date. Like when right before I had my daughter, we went in and made a new will because I needed to make sure she was in it, because I was like, if I die in childbirth or any time after and it's not up to date, not that I'll spiral because I'll be dead, but I want to make sure that
you can
they're
spiral while you're
okay.
dead. Jenna, if anyone can spiral in the afterlife,
That's
is
true.
you.
I can do it. I can bring that.
You'll bring your spiraling ass ghost back down.
Yep. So when I tell people that we have like a full on will that we went to a lawyer, they're like, what? I'm like, oh yeah, we do, because I mean, and it lists everything.
Yeah.
This is what
like
we wish for our kids.
Ours is like, I think my sister takes our kids, but then she has like a money manager, and then she has like also a decision manager. Like there's like, my kids have a team in
Same
place
here.
if something happens.
And then I even have, if plan A doesn't work out and they die, I even have plan B. Like,
yeah, we have plan B too.
It's that spiral of, I don't want this to happen to my kids. And if it does, then I want them to be safe, and I want to be in control. I really do. I want to say where they go.
And a big part of us making our decisions was based on me knowing how painful losing a parent is. And I would probably have picked different people had I not lost a parent. I needed the person that would be the sweetest and lovingest and snuggliest to my kids, because I know that's what you need when you lose a parent. Had I not lost a parent and made this will, I'd have been like, who's going to make sure my kids go through high school and are successful? And now I'm like, I don't give a fuck if they're successful. I want someone that's going to snuggle them for 7 hours and stay up in the middle of the night with them while they cry.
That's what we talked about. I was like, I need someone to love my babies and understand, and
take the day to just lay on the couch and rub their heads if they need it. I don't care what they become. Just get them through this.
And personally, with my birthdays, now that I'm in my 30s, I find my birthday very difficult, because I think if I follow my parents' path, I'm more than halfway done with my life. And shit, I'm not ready for that. I just got a palpitation talking about that.
I know. But that's a trauma response, which I learned at art therapy this last weekend. She was talking to me about when my mom got sick with her mental health issues, and she was like, so how old were you? And I was like, oh, I think I was like 10 or 11. And she was like, so how old would that have made your mom? And I was like, I don't know, probably 37. And she was like, how old are you? And I was like, 36. And she was like, so you're coming up on the anniversary of your mom getting sick. Are you scared you're going to get sick? And I was like, no one's ever asked me that before. I'm so afraid every day. And I was just like, and so like, you can have trauma reactions to things that were just traumatic in your life. This doesn't have to be around death. I didn't realize that I was coming up on the age when my mom got very mentally sick. That is something that was weighing on my heart that I couldn't get out until I was drawing like a shitty picture of a car at my art therapy session. So there's traumas lurking in the back of your brain that you're not even bringing to the table, let alone these horrible grief. And that's another thing I wanted to touch on, is when you said you don't see yourself. I've never seen myself as getting old either. However, we did see our parents get old, but in a very scary way.
Exactly.
I don't know if you saw this. I saw my dad go from a buxom 6'3", 300-pound gorilla to a man whose thigh was the size of my forearm in a matter of 4 months. I watched a man who had always taken care of his appearance go from this healthy Hulk to a shriveled human being in a matter of months. And so we didn't see our parents grow old, but we also watched this like extremely hyper terrifying version of them looking like an old person, but it was because of sickness. And that in itself is traumatic, because watching someone that it was always been this pillar of strength go from everything and more to you to this like sad person in a bed withering away is just something I wouldn't wish on anyone ever.
And 2 points with that. So first of all, my mom had breast cancer when she was 29. And when I turned 29, I have been very diligent about, I think I am only have to go to the midwife like every 3 years for a checkup. And I tell them, no, I want to go every year. And they've been accepting of that, because that was very triggering. Like when I turned 29, I was like, I'm going to have breast cancer. And now I'm 33, which my husband told me today because I thought I was 31. But I am 33 and I still am completely healthy and not following my mom's path, but I still can't get that out of my mind. But also, no, with seeing your parents pass the way we did, it is so traumatic because I can't even imagine what they were thinking and feeling, for one. And two, I don't want my kids to go through what you and I went through. And so I think it's just very, very triggering. And so whenever these dates come up, I think about not just the date of their passing, but all those days leading up to it. And I can't tell you how many days it was because it's all a blur, but I know with both parents, it was multiple days, and I was living in this hell of watching them. I mean, take away somebody's humanity when you take away every function of their life, basically. But they're still, with my dad, he wasn't fully cognitively aware, or so the doctors say. However, I think he was, because he was pacing and he just, you could tell mentally he wasn't exactly right. And I shared a lot of his artwork from when he started to really go downhill, and you could see how dark it got. And I think that was anxiety because he knew what was going on, or confusion because he didn't know what was going on. Either way, both of those are awful.
Probably both.
Mm-hmm. And then with my mom, she was modest in a way because she wanted to just be seen as like the mother. She never wanted us to take care of her. She wanted to remain composed in front of friends, family, everyone. And when you take away somebody's ability to get up and use the restroom, to change their clothes, to brush their teeth, to hold down food, I mean, it just broke my heart because she was mentally aware. I'm losing every function. And that was so hard. And honestly, like the weeks leading up to it, I remember those. It's not the happy memories.
I agree with you too, because I remember my dad was strapped down to the bed because he'd fall asleep and then he'd wake up and try to pull one of his tubes out. And you'd call me and be like, Jenelle, he would not remember. He would get my brother confused a lot, and I think it's because my brother reminded him of his dad. He would get my sister confused a little bit, but he almost always called me Jenelle. He called me Kate, my mom's name, a couple times, but he would call me and be like, I need to get unstrapped. They need to unstrap my arms. Like, you can't tell me that person isn't cognitively aware and they're not able to get up and use the restroom when they're strapped to a bed. And it really was not the dignified way you would want to see someone you love go. And that's why I always say, like, I hope I just poof into the night air and my kids never have to watch anything like that. But I guess it was a gift in its own way that we got to see and be there for them as they struggled to leave. But it was something I would never wish on anyone.
It is not like the movies. And honestly, it's a fear of mine to suffer like either of my parents did. I mean,
in the movies, you always watch them. Even when we watch like the medieval movies, someone's always tucked in bed with their hair in beautiful curlers, and they look a little bit hollowed out in the cheeks, and that ain't the game. Like, we didn't even I have a lot of pictures when I was seeing my dad at the end. We never took pictures of his face because we didn't feel that was dignified for him, because he had, the feeding tube and different things, and his hair was starting to grow back, which he always kept his head clean shaven. So all the pictures are like from behind, and we never took pictures of his face. We took pictures of us holding his hands. We just never wanted him to have to feel like that was exposed in him. I think I have one picture of him because it was just my brother sitting next to him, but it's just, it's a grimy, bad situation. And for us to not feel it year after year would make us bizarre robots, I feel like.
And I don't know about you, but personally, the longer it goes on, the more memories pop up from that week. Not the happy memories, but the memories of that week. And one of my friends was sharing, she has a podcast as well, and she just lost her dad, and she was talking about picking up her dad's ashes, and he was riding in the front seat. And she was like, I remember his physical body being there. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, because I can remember that. I can remember going and saying, I need to pick up my mom, and getting her. And then I remember taking her with me to Roanoke, where we buried her. And we were making jokes, but I remember also the wind being knocked out of me, because I was like, 2 weeks ago, she was sitting right here talking to me, and now she's in ash. And it just hit me. And I was just like,
it still does.
Yeah. I didn't even have that memory at all. I completely blocked it out. And so these little things will pop up, and it's like, whoop, there's another one. Whoop, there's another one. Like, can you give me the happy ones instead? I'd prefer that.
No happy here. But I agree with you. Like, we still have my dad's ashes, and we joke about like, is he coming on vacation with us?
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
like we'll be like, does he want to come? If we go to Fort Myers, he's gonna come, right?
Yeah.
And I remember the funeral worker, the lovely funeral director walked in and handed me my dad, and he was like, he's a heavy one. And I was like, oh yeah, he was a big guy, and like took it. And then I was like, oh my God. Like he's heavy because he was so big, and we're joking about how heavy his ashes are. Like,
I mean, what else can you do at this point? Like, what do you do? Like,
it was like at the end of his funeral, the funeral director went and picked him up from the crematorium, which was so nice. So we didn't have to go do it. And then he handed him to me and was like, oh, he's a big guy. And I was like, it was like taking a baby, but I'm taking my dad's ashes, and they're so heavy because he was so big. And then literally, if you put the ashes on the front seat, it recognizes a person being
you have
there
to strap
and
him in.
The seatbelt motherfucking chime. Like,
it does.
What horror show are we living in right now?
Exactly. So we had this joke, right? We took my mom to Roanoke because we were going to plant her ashes with a tree there. And my mom loved fashion and loved her shoes and her jackets and everything. So it was always a joke that she never carried her luggage on a plane because she had so much. And you're right, she had to have her hair products and all this stuff. And it was just something that made my mom her. And so in Roanoke is where her brother and her mom live. And so I took a picture of mom's ashes in the front seat and I sent it to him. And I was like, first time in her life, she didn't overpack. Like, you just kind of have to get dark. And I was like, and they didn't respond right away. And I was like, did I just cross the line with my family? Turns out they didn't have service. And luckily they like laughed, but I started panicking and I was like, I just sent that to her mom and her brother and they think I'm awful. Like,
they know you have to say some demented stuff to get through. We did the same thing. We were driving back from Minnesota to Virginia, and my husband, you know, every night we would stop, my husband would bring in our suitcases and my dad, because he's like, if someone breaks into the car, I don't want him to steal your dad. And it was so weird to be like bringing in the suitcases and my dad into the hotel room because he's not sleeping there. The irony of some of these situations are so awful that there's just no way to express.
No. I mean, you just have
the silliness of it. You have to laugh and you have to make it silly because otherwise your brain would implode at the horrors that it is trying to take in. All right, last but not least in the article, number 5, find support. Don't be ashamed that you're still dealing with trauma years later. But it's never too late to start looking for support. I've seen people reclaim their lives 10, 20, or even 50 years after their trauma. Shop around for a therapist. We preach that every time. That you like and you trust. There are proven therapy techniques out there and medications that can banish nightmares and soothe other symptoms. If sleep disturbances go on for too long, you will never heal. I know that my sleep disturbances are just this weird anniversary phase, and they will go away. But in the early days, if your sleep is disturbed for long enough, it will have psychological impact on you and will delay your ability to heal. So if you're in the early days and you need some medication to help you sleep, please get it, please take it, and please get yourself some sleep because you can't deal with grief on no sleep. I promise. I've tried. You can't do it.
I can't remember if it was one or both of my grandparents had to take medication to help them sleep because they both lost a child. It was like my mom's mom and my dad's mom. And I told them, they were kind of embarrassed, and I told them I was really proud of them, and they were like, what? And I was like, remember, it's not forever. Like, let's get through this. Let's get over the hump, work on some coping mechanisms, but you can't work on coping mechanisms when you're running on E. Your body is in fight mode at that point, and it's just trying to survive, and it's gonna do crazy things. Like, you need the sleep.
That's what happened to me today. I haven't slept in like 3 days, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go work out because I'll get those good endorphins going. We got this. And I was like, what would Jenna do? Jenna would tell me, and you did tell me, put on a movie and lay down on the couch and take a nap. And I just pulled a hoodie up over the front of my head and was like, don't get off the couch. And I slept so hard that the kids had to wake me up before their babysitter got here. And now I feel like a new person because my brain is able to start processing things again. It's true. Sometimes, and when's the last time that I just fell asleep after I got my COVID shot, my second COVID shot was the last time I fell asleep on the couch. And before that, it's been a year probably. So like, that shows you how desperately I needed to just shut down and reboot.
And I will say, with these days, and I have to remember this myself, or weeks, whatever your grief period is at that time. One, it's okay to do whatever you want and whatever you need. If you need to nap, If you need to watch TV all day to distract your mind, do that. If you want to go running, do that. But listen to your body. Don't listen to society. Don't say, society tells me I should be crying. Society tells me I should be visiting family. Do you and do what you want. There have been times where I don't want to be alone and times where I want to be alone. And you have to listen to that. I'm sitting here preaching to myself as well because I have to remember that. But I will say this year on the grief anniversary, I lined stuff up to be social as well as to be alone. But I told everyone, okay, I'm lining this up, but I'm not committing. One of my good friends,
you can't commit.
She was like, do you want to come over tomorrow night, like the night before my dad's anniversary? And I was like, yes, but I don't know if I will. She was like, I can handle that. So I didn't, because that's when I crashed. So we're meeting up next week. I appreciated that beyond belief, that there was no like, are you sure you don't want to come tonight? It was just like, okay, let's do next week.
I promise it'll make you feel better, girl. Like,
exactly.
If you're a grief support person, know that we are flaky as fuck and there's nothing you can do and it has nothing to do with you. Like, I needed to just lay down on the couch and shut down today, or I was not going to be good to anyone. Sometimes I need to be out of the house for the entire day, and some days I need my kids and my husband to leave and leave me alone. Like, and it's not going to be the same year after year. So don't say, okay, last year I really needed to be alone, because then if you block yourself off to be alone, you might be
you want to be with somebody
more than people. It's crazy. None of it is linear. None of it follows a protocol. It's going to be different year after year. I didn't have this much trouble. I don't remember with my dad's birthday last year. I had the most trouble with my birthday. And this year I might have I might throw a big old party for my birthday, but my dad's birthday crushed me this year. Crushed me.
Yeah. And my husband always schedules things that can be easily moved and canceled and changed. Like,
bravo.
Yeah. Like Mother's Day, we had all these plans, and I was like, I want to get a tattoo and look at RVs. And he was like, all right, let's do it. Like,
let's do it. Yeah, that's the same. And I said to my husband, I was like, I love you on Father's Day, but I need to go. If we're going to go on our first date post COVID. And I said, I need to do it on Saturday in case I'm a wreck on Sunday. And so we're going to celebrate my husband preemptively on Father's Day, because he deserves to be celebrated, but I might not be in a good place on the actual day.
That's so smart.
And even if I say to my husband, like, I'm a wreck, I can't go tonight, he'll be fine with it. And like, be okay with whatever your grieving person needs, and just be there to support them, and know it has nothing to do with you. They don't not want to see you. They don't find you to not be a supportive person in their life. They just are fucking flaky. Yeah. And
be okay with your decision as well and what you need. That took me a long time. I thought I had to, for Father's Day, do all these certain things and celebrate these certain people. Well, those people know how I feel. And if they really know me, they know how I felt about my dad. So even though it's been on my to-do list for a week to do something for Father's Day, here we are, 3-4 days out, and I have nothing planned. I told my husband that, and telling him that was such a relief. I was like, I love you. And this holiday is not about you right now, and not about how I feel about you. It's about grief. And that's the headspace I'm in.
And he was probably fine with it once you explained it to him, right?
Oh, he knows. He's completely fine with it.
I told Josh that last year. I was like, I can't do it this year. I'm sorry. I love you. You're the most exceptional father to our kids, but I need you to know, like, your kids are celebrating you. And I need to kind of celebrate my father. And this year I feel more comfortable putting them together, but we're still a few days out. Who knows how I'll feel then? But understand that if you're the person who thinks like maybe you're having your birthday party and your friend is like, I'm sorry, I just can't come. I'm feeling really weird about my death anniversary of XYZ. And this doesn't just apply to parents. This applies to people that have lost children, who have lost friends, who have lost jobs. Like, grief manifests. And I'm also going to link another podcast that's 13 minutes long. I don't know if I sent this to you yet or not. That just talks about how you have to honor your grief, or it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. It's from Life Kit on NPR. And I'm really trying to allow myself to sit in my grief and feel it and let it happen. Today, I would have never laid down on the couch and taken a nap. I would have gone downstairs and worked out on my treadmill until I couldn't feel feelings anymore. But I knew what Jenna said, and just take a rest and reset was the better choice. And I feel 200% improved. So thank you, Dr. Jenna.
You're welcome. Well, and I think that's a great point, because there is a fine line between doing what you feel like your body needs to do and doing it to avoid the feelings.
That's what I was planning. I was planning an avoidance run.
Yes. And so when I say, I don't want to be at home. I want to go out and get a tattoo and look at RVs. It's because that's what my body wanted. And the tattoo I got, it was on Mother's Day, and it was to commemorate my mom. And as odd as it sounds, but like the little bit of pain associated with the tattoo was almost like a healing thing for me.
And that's not a weird thing. That's millions of people say that.
Is it? I'm like, and
that's a super common thing that people do it for.
Right. And if I was like running away from this whole thing, I would have just said like, nobody talk to me, nobody look at me. I don't want to be around anyone. But I wouldn't have taken that
Sister Wives like you're normal.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't have taken that time to sit in my grief. And if you find that you're using substances to cope with that, then that's also a big warning sign that you're not in the best place. There's a difference in cheering somebody and celebrating and then drinking to numb or using to numb. And it's so common. And so do what you need to do. I want to say thank you to my friends who have understood. Even with my girlfriend, when I was spiraling, we were supposed to have a play date that morning and I canceled it, but then I still ended up at her house, but I couldn't label it as a play date because I was like, I need to be productive and I need to solve this problem. And she was so cool with it. And I sat in her living room and I let myself cry.
Find those people and stay with those people and hold on to those people and thank those people because they are the truest gems in the whole wide world.
Yep. And then Jenelle listened to my ramblings from however many miles away you are. And
they're my favorite.
Yep.
It's Jen's talk show. I love listening to it.
It's either I have advice for you or I'm spiraling and I need help.
So. You had to listen. But that's what we go back and forth. Advice, spiral. And we haven't synced up yet. So at least one of us is always giving advice and one of us is always spiraling in opposite weeks. So it really works out well for everyone.
But if you need help, reach out to us because I hate to say it, but I've in the last 6 months had a lot of friends who have lost parents. So even if I'm not the person for you, I have other people that I can hook you up with or podcasts I can recommend or resources because you're not alone. And grief is not just for the people who have lost somebody. If you're in the process of losing somebody or have the fear of it, I had the fear of losing my mom so many times. I called my family 2 or 3 times before my mom actually passed and said, this is it, you need to come, because I was so scared. If you have a family member or a loved one that has a terminal diagnosis, you're not alone and you're grieving, and that's okay. And we're here for you.
And it's okay to grieve other things too. They talk about that on the Life Kit episode. There's people, and you included, and I hope this isn't upsetting to you, but they talk about people who lost family members during COVID and didn't get to go to funerals. Like, you get to grieve not only the loss of the person, but the loss of the ability to celebrate. There's a lot of people that didn't get to go to funerals during COVID for people they loved. And that fucking sucks. And it hurts my heart so bad because you need that closure as a human being. We need to grieve the fact not only that you lost a loved one, but also that you didn't get to commemorate the loved one the way you wanted to. And you can grieve a job loss, and you can grieve the loss of, my husband lost a lot of his happiness in not being able to travel and entertain this last year. Like, you can grieve a million things. COVID is going to have grief effects on future generations. Our kids were abruptly ripped out of school on a Friday and never went back and saw their friends. Like, there's a million things to grieve, and small, they call them, I want to say they call it indiscernible grief, but that's not right. But they talk about it a lot on the episode, which is grief that people don't, like, people feel like they shouldn't be able to feel sad when their dog dies because there's people that have it worse. Your grief is your grief.
I had that happen to me today. I had a friend who lost a dog, and it was a very close relationship to this dog. And she told me, I've been thinking about you a lot. And then this was over text. I quickly saw the bubbles, and it was like, I don't want to compare it to your parents. And I was like, no, like, grief is grief and loss is loss. Like, it does not matter if it is a hamster or a parent. Your body is going to react how your body is going to react, and your heart is going to react how your heart is going to react. It does not matter. Loss is loss.
We don't us at the high end of the, like, say we're at the top of the grief pyramid because we're not. People that have lost children win the grief Olympics, but like people that lost parents young, we aren't any better than the person grieving that they lost their hamster or their cat. Like, if you love something, you're allowed to grieve as long and in any way that you want. we don't feel like we deserve more of it's not a pie. Like,
no,
just because I take this much grief doesn't mean you only get this little sliver because it was your kitten.
Exactly.
Like, everybody should be able to grieve the whole way they need to.
Yep. And so if you are coming up on holidays, anniversaries, anything, our biggest advice from this, and it was a learning episode, or it was a learning moment for Jenelle and I, and we said this needs to be talked about, is take a step back and say, is this grief? And if it is, then implement some of those steps and reach out for help. If it's not grief and you still feel like you're spiraling, then get professional help and try and figure out what is going. Call your doctor, call your therapist, and figure it out. But this is very eye-opening for me because grief has really gotten to me this year for many reasons and is portraying itself in a completely different way. So
yeah, we said that. I wrote that in something I wrote today. Grief is a sneaky bitch. Like she shapeshifts every year. She's gonna come in sideways. She's gonna slither in like a snake while you're sleeping. Like there's just no rhyme or reason to it. There's no rules. It sneaks up and you can't discern it from depression and anxiety. I was sitting there at the park today watching my kids and I was like, this is what I felt like when I had fully unmedicated depression. Mm-hmm. I could barely walk over to the playground to yank Mikey off that slide. Like I was like, it felt like I was walking through quicksand, which you hear described in depression a lot. It's Tunnel vision. Hard to identify. Yes. And even just right now, I shook my head side to side and I was like, oh, little dizzy. Like it's all happening. And I would think this was just plain old depression. But if you can't tell if you don't know if this is grief or depression, go on Psychology Today, which we always say, and look up a grief counselor and just say, you know what, I want to get an idea. Do you think I'm dealing with bereavement or do you think I'm dealing with depression? And they will help you. But and get probably answers say for both, yourself.
Because grief causes anxiety for me. She's like, I just wake up in one morning and she's like, knock, knock. Guess who's here?
Hey, baby. Guess who's here? I'm snuggling in. You got some coffee for me? Let's have 7 cups together today.
I try and lock the door and she's like, I got the magic key.
Doesn't Jenna and I always joke is that grief tries to convince us that 7 cups of coffee will make it better, but it's actually just the gateway drug to a full panic attack.
Like when I was writing on my form this morning, it was like, list your parents' health status. And I was like deceased and I had too much coffee and then it made me anxious and it's all like squiggly.
The second one is like deceased. And that's another thing that sneaks up on us too, because you and I both this week had to fill out forms and write that our people were deceased. And that fucking sucks. Every doctor's appointment I go to. Yes, every doctor's appointment I go to, I'm like, is it going to be a form where I have to write dad's dead? Because I can't wait.
Because the last time I had to write that, the last time I had to write that was probably over a year ago. And now it's like, let me sneak this in during this anniversary. Set fucking Bob behind his keyboard in his simulation.
Fuck you, Bob. Oh my God.
So with that, call your therapist.
And take your meds. We love you.
2, 3, 4.